to one of the microphones. I first give the floor to Jeremy Korbi.
Do I speak from here or the restaurant?
Whatever you want. You can speak from here.
Friends, thank you very much for inviting me here today, and it's a real pleasure to be in a minority of being one man on a platform dominated by women. I think it's a very good precedent. And in Britain, I've managed to appoint a majority of women to our shadow cabinet in the Labour Party, and it's something we wish to carry out in government as well. So there will be a majority of women ministers in a Labour government in Britain. We're very determined to achieve that. And it's wonderful to be here in Prague, a city of such beauty, but also a city that's been convulsed with so much of the history of this continent and the struggle for democracy and social justice. It's also a city that suffered the scourge of Nazi occupation and its genocidal crimes. And later today, I'm going to the Terezin Memorial to show our solidarity with those that suffered in the darkest days of Europe when we were fighting back against the fascists. Because there's a message here. We cannot and never must allow anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, or any kind of hate to develop across this continent. The only way forward for socialists, the only way forward for the left, is one of unity against all of that. Unity of taking people forward together to a better world and better living standards in the future. So as we pay tribute to those that fell in the past, we resolve to do things differently in the future. But it's also clear that there is a problem of the alarming rise and acceleration of the populist right all across this continent. Be it UKIP in my country, in Britain, Donald Trump and the language he used in the presidential election in the United States, or what's happening in Hungary with Jobbik, or Marine Le Pen in France with her National Front. So politics has been shaken across the world. And we know why the populist right is gaining ground. And it's increasingly hard to get our message heard. It's up to us to offer a real political alternative. But we have to analyse what the situation is at present. The gap between the rich and poor is widening. Living standards are stagnating or falling. Insecurity is growing. Many people feel left behind by the forces unleashed by globalization. They feel powerless in the face of deregulated corporate power. Bernie Sanders put some of this very well during his campaign to be the Democratic Party's presidential candidate, when he said that corporate America had bought up industrial America, deindustrialized it and sold it off, invested their money elsewhere and put their profits into tax havens, thus leaving whole swathes of the former industrial states around the Great Lakes region as a rust belt. We have to deal with those issues, and we have to deal with them quickly and seriously. The populist right do identify many of the problems, but their toxic solution is actually a dead end. It's about attacking minorities rather than facing the real issues that many communities face. So unless progressive parties and movements across Europe are prepared to break with the economic and political establishment of the past, which has sought to manage the political change of increasing globalization, then we are going to have problems. We have to offer a different economic message. It is about convincing the long-term unemployed that the reason there is no work for them is not because of migrants, it's because of an economic program which has encouraged deindustrialization and insecurity. We have to make clear that our public services are being run down because of austerity and often very predatory privatization. So we cannot and must not abandon socialist principles, because many tell us that's the only way to achieve power. I think we have to put forward a very clear economic message, one of social justice and one of inclusion. For too long, we've been seen as apologists for a broken system, and too long, we're not seen as standing up against unfettered capitalism and what it achieved. Too often we've been not understood in the message that we're putting forward. We cannot and must not be just protectors of the status quo. We have to offer something very different. I have every confidence that we can do that. Internationalism and socialism is at our very core. I might come from a country that has voted, unfortunately, to leave the European Union, but we're not leaving Europe, we're not leaving the family of socialists. We're here because we want to work with socialists and like-minded people all across this continent to develop a similar economic program, one of redistribution of wealth and power to those that need it most, and a reduction in levels of inequality all across this continent. I see my time is almost up because there's a huge clock down there that's stuck on 0.00.01. Wonderful, keep it there. Last, I want to finish on this point. There is a humanitarian and refugee crisis in this continent and outside its borders. It is terrifying for the individuals involved. They are products of war, they're products of injustice, they're products of human rights abuses. We cannot stand by and watch them suffer. We have to do the right thing, the humanitarian thing. Give them all the support they need in the hours of crisis that they're in at the present time, but also redouble our efforts to bring about a political settlement of the wars all across the Middle East, particularly that's going on in Syria. And so in Britain, we're campaigning on the issues of our future economic relationships with Europe. We don't want to be part of an economy that's a race to the bottom. We want to be part of an economy that is a growing redistributive economy. We want to maintain very good and effective trade relations with Europe and protect workers' rights and conditions in our country and across Europe. And that is the approach we're taking to the Brexit negotiations, and it's why I've invited socialist parties across Europe to come to London in February to work with us on achieving all of that. There is no future in scapegoating minorities. There is no future in promoting greater inequality. There is only a future of us giving a clear message of what we're about as socialists, what we're about, of the kind of world we want to live in. We have to be not just the managers of the economy, but the agents for change in the economic relationships that people face, not just in Europe, but across other parts of the world. That's what's brought us together here in Prague. That's what unites us as socialists, and that's what's going to take us together to meet the challenge of the far right in Europe and to meet the challenge of economic injustice that's been brought about by free market economics in many parts of the world. That is what our challenge is about. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Thank you very much, Jeremi Korbin, for your introduction. I think this has been very clear and very good analysis, and partly already going into the direction where we need to go together.